Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Today, we have Chris Tillett, who will be explaining to us the process of navigating what can be quite a challenge, making your business legal in the city that you do business in. So Chris Tillett, take it away.
Thanks, Zach. So like Zach said, my name's Chris Tillett. I work for the City of Norfolk's Economic Development Department. We're going to kind of try to keep it general, though I work for the City of Norfolk. Most city, states, locales, processes are generally going to be the same. So, having said that, I'm sure many of you have had an idea about a business or wanted to go expand your business, and when you were ready to execute and got into that process, knowing that there was going to be some sort of a process to getting your business or an expansion off the ground, ran into something that just had you like, whoa, this is just way out of control. I had no idea that was going to be involved. So generally there are 3 to 4 different departments that you're going to run into when trying to start your business. And I will tell you, I'm a little biased, but the number one department you should always be talking to first is economic development, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But the other departments that you'll run into or interface with are your planning department, your commissioner of revenue, some of the smaller locales. Economic development and planning can be combined into your community and planning departments or community development department. But having said that, your commissioner of revenue and your planning departments are generally going to be your official approval bodies. So the business license comes out of the commissioner of revenue, and your planning departments give your zoning approvals, any type of special use or special exception permits. Now let's get into the economic development side, because those are really going to be the people that are going to be able to walk you through. So the economic development department, or planning and community development, depending on how they're lumped, are going to be the people that will walk you through the process. So basically, they've got all of the industry experts that range from everything with permitting and licensing processes, site selection, market research, workforce development, incentive programs, which a lot of people are trying to go after. If you can get free money, why not take it, right? So also trainings. Trainings are going to be really big, and they have access to those trainings. Now I also want to talk a little bit about expansion while I'm on the economic development department side, because again, they've got the experts that are going to know all of the different rules, ordinances, weird setbacks that you might have to meet if you're actually doing a physical expansion, as well as access to capital. A lot of your development departments or your economic development offices, depending on where you're located, have access to really, really great loan programs, potential grants, facade improvement grants, depending on what the locale may have. So in any type of expansion, whether you're moving to a different city, talk to the city you're in, even if you're moving to a different city, or if you're doing a physical bricks and mortar expansion, they are number one, because they interface with pretty much any of the other departments. And kind of having said that, a lot of locales have picked up on this thing called the concierge, which I'm one. So what that really means is they're starting to hire or bring on either a city or a business concierge to be there to help the individual or the business from start to finish. They are there to handhold from A all the way to Z. So it's kind of a new thing. Not a lot of cities, locales have them yet, but it's definitely a big trend in kind of the local government and being able to help the small businesses as well as the large ones kind of succeed and grow. Okay, now having said that, and this is something that a lot of people probably don't talk about, and I don't know if it's a big issue, it's something that I see is, what do you do when nobody from the city calls you back, right? I mean, you've got all this information on here, you're looking around, but you can't get anybody to call you back. I'm a little old school. I'm a firm believer in phone calls first. So get on the website, get the main line, try to figure out who you need to talk to. Well, let me backtrack. Having said that, I highly recommend getting on whatever department's website, should be the economic development first, and see if they have individual job descriptions, because that'll give you a really good idea of who you need to be talking to. A lot of times you could call the main line and the assistant's just going to transfer you to who they may think may be the most appropriate, which is not always right. Generally they know because they're there every day, but that's not always the case. So before you call, highly recommend getting on there, because what also you can do is, you know whose email to ask for in case that person doesn't answer, because that's going to be another really big thing that we'll get into in just a second. So if the info is not really listed on the website, you can't find who you may need, kind of try to come up with a brief explanation of what your most important need is. So when you do call the main line, you can kind of elegantly ask or kind of tell them what the need is. And again, remember to ask before you're being transferred of who you're being transferred to, so you can get that email address to send them the email if they don't answer. So we'll get into that. I really want to be honest here. If city employees answered the phone every time it rang, they'd never get off the phone, and they really wouldn't be able to do much work. So email is always, always second best, and for two reasons in my book. Number one, it's documented and time-stamped. So nobody can ever question you on whether or not the email was there, at what time, what day it got there. Secondly, it gives the recipient time to research pretty much any of the questions that you're going to ask. Unless it's something very, very basic, they're going to have to get into either the code book or ask around on those different questions. And the last piece on that would be, I do not recommend leaving a message with somebody over the phone, not through voicemail, but actually leaving a handwritten message with the administrative assistant or secretary, because a lot of times names, phone numbers get misplaced, thrown away, doesn't make it to the desk, and then there's no documentation or timestamp on if you ever even really called. So I don't recommend really doing that. So what happens when you get through all that? You've made the phone calls, you've made the emails, and you still got no response. This is really where your council people or aldermen, depending on where you're located, really become your best asset. They want to know when their city departments are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's obviously a really big thing with transparency, trusting the government officials to do what they're supposed to be doing. So your council people, aldermen, will be very strong assets. You shoot them an email, 99% out of the time, they're going to get you a phone call back. Now, let's say that you don't get the phone call back. There's one more place in my book that you can go. Figure out where you're putting your business, or just in general, if there are any civic or neighborhood league associations, any business associations. Meet with them, because odds are the president of that association, or at least one person in that group, guaranteed will get you a call back from somebody of importance. Generally when it goes that route, or if you're doing the councilman, alderman route, probably going straight to the mayor or the city manager, which means eyes are on it almost immediately, and your boss is saying, hey, I need you to run this down. So those, in my book, are generally the best ways to kind of reach out to people. Now, another tricky way you can kind of do it, if there are no email addresses and you're trying to find an email address but you can't get anybody to call you back, search somewhere on the city website. There will be somebody's email address somewhere on that website. Go into the departments, look to see if the director's in there. Generally, the way that email address is, everybody who has an email address in the city is going to be almost identical. A lot of places it's first dot last name at city.gov or county.gov. So if you can find an email address, generally everybody else's, and that's always going to be the same, but that's kind of a little trick that you can try if you really are trying to search for an email address. Now, one of the last things that Zach wanted me to talk about is maybe what to ask, what not to ask. I was running through that in my head, and generally there isn't a question that you shouldn't ask the Economic Development Department. They're there to help. So in my book, it kind of comes down to at what level of preparedness are you right now in your own process. If you've got this idea but don't know what to do with it, there are places like Hatch, your small business development centers, your Chamber of Commerce's, as well as your economic development departments. The development department's more to put you in touch with those people. The Hatches and the small business development centers are the ones that are going to help you foster that idea. Maybe put together a business plan if that's something that they feel is appropriate or not. Whole side topic. Some people have an idea that business plans aren't as necessary as they used to be. Whole nother side topic for another conversation. But again, it really depends on the level of preparedness. If you've got the idea but aren't ready to execute, I highly suggest reaching out to your development centers, your small business development centers, your Hatches, your incubators, your accelerators, because they're going to be the ones, again, to kind of take that idea and get you ready to execute. To me, when you're ready to when you're ready to execute, when you need that location or you're ready to get that business license, if you're doing maybe an e-commerce and you don't need an actual location, that's when you're calling your departments. That's when you're starting off calling your economic development department. Because when you start off, there may be programs, incentives, something that the city, locale, county may be doing that can help you. I mean, whether that's, and it may not even necessarily be anything to deal with money. It could be access to training, access to employees. A lot of your economic development offices have workforce development as a part of it. They're working with these outside nonprofit organizations that that will help employees, finding qualified employees to kind of help you grow your business if you're going that route. So to kind of come full circle again, to me there really is never a wrong question to ask. Now, again, if you're very, very fresh in what's your idea or the business that you've got, a lot of times your economic development offices or your planning departments are going to push you off to not necessarily a nonprofit, but an outside agency that can kind of help foster that idea. So again, when you're ready to execute, to me, that's the time you call the city to kind of help. So I hope that gives you at least somewhat of an idea of how to navigate the city. Kind of just to recap, the three main departments are going to be your economic development department, your planning department, and your commissioner of revenue. Again, commissioner of revenue, planning departments are going to be your officialness approvals, your zoning, your business license, and your economic development department is going to be the one to walk you through all of that process, to handhold from A to Z. And then again, the whole how do you get a call back? I highly, highly recommend, calling number one to get somebody on the line. It's always great to be able to talk to somebody in person, over the phone, and then email. Email is super key. You get time stamped and it's documented. So when you do forward that email to the councilperson, alderman, civic league, mayor, there's a time stamp on when you actually sent that email, so they can make sure, if it's a month later and the employee hasn't answered back, we have issues there. So again, I hope that gives you somewhat of an understanding of how to navigate generally through any city or locale. Obviously, there are different processes depending on the business or the use that you are, but you can never go wrong with hitting those three departments and calling your economic development department first. So again, my name's Chris Tillett. I work for the City of Norfolk's Economic Development Department, and I hope this was a little informative for you today. Thank you. Sir, yes.
Okay, so questions.
Absolutely. Love them.
Does Norfolk, I'm intrigued with this concierge service.
Yes, sir.
Does Norfolk do that?
Yes, so I am, in fact, the business concierge for the City of Norfolk. I do a lot of different things, ranging from the concierge. I am also the enterprise zone administrator, which is a special zone that you can get certain incentives, monies back, depending on real property investment and job creation. I also had the film initiative and some housing stuff. But yes, Norfolk has a concierge. That is I, Chris Tillett. I am not familiar with any of the other cities in the area having a concierge, and I'm not familiar with a lot of cities, United States wide, that has them. I have seen a lot of documentation, articles, press releases that talk about cities wanting to hire them, cities needing them. You'll hear a lot about council people and different civic leagues, business associations wanting to have some sort of concierge position. So yes, to answer your question, Norfolk does have one, and that is me.
So where does the responsibility lie? If a business owner comes to you and you walk them through the different steps,
Sir.
Are you staying in touch with them during the process, or is it their responsibility to keep up with it? Where is the...
That's a great question, because a lot of times things fall through the cracks, and an example exactly like that. So it's both. I will be calling. I know when the critical deadlines are. I'm not going to be calling you every week to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, because as a good business owner, you should be doing that. You should want to succeed. But as we approach critical dates and deadlines, because that's always on my brain, is when, city process. There's times, dates, and things that have to happen. So I reach out when I know that these deadlines are happening, and in often cases, because the business is your bread and butter, that's what you're putting your heart and your sweat, your blood, and your tears into. I'm getting calls daily a lot of times from these people because they want to make sure that I'm on track and they're on track. So to answer the question, it's both sides' responsibility to stay in contact. I hope that answers your question a little bit there.
How do you handle business owners that are not documented the way they should be?
You know, that's tough. I try to just do my best and let them know of the dates, and this is what you have to have. You know, I personally will take applications and walk them around to different areas. I've taken people into the Commissioner of Revenue's office to get business license. I've done that a lot here for Hatch. I will walk them to the Development Services Center to get their permits if need be, because sometimes there are ways that I can explain the situation that maybe the business owner doesn't. A lot of what I do is dealing with permitting. My job kind of started out with developers getting through site plan and planning commission, so a lot of times they understood what was being talked. But when you start talking with just somebody who owns a business, may not be a contractor, so when they're going through an expansion and they're hearing this language that just makes absolutely no sense, that's when I will try to jump in and make sure that things get explained the way that they should be. Does that answer somewhat? And I can, if you need me to elaborate on any of those points, I'm more than happy to. Excellent. Yes, sir.
How would I, as a business owner, if I'm a small business owner or minority business owner, how would I go about finding initiatives started by any city or anything that would help me, start my business up?
Great question. Again, your economic development department is going to be number one. They oftentimes have the SWAM, what is known as Small Women and Minority-Owned Business, a person who focuses specifically on that in the office. If not, they are going to be the ones that will have the contacts to those special programs, to those special taxing districts. So again, as I said before, number one, call. Always, always, always. Economic development, number one. They are the people that should know everything that your city is doing and all the access to the different programs, technical assistance, hiring, and any types of grants or loan programs or funding sources. So economic development, number one. They are your best friend in any locale. Hope that answers it a little bit. Yes,
What are
sir.
some other departments that I might have to deal with?
Definitely going to deal with planning. Now, planning's a really big department. You've got your surveys, your zoning, neighborhoods is oftentimes in there, different types of inspectors. So generally when you're going through it, let's use brick and mortar for an example. So you're more than likely you're talking to Public Works and Utilities to make sure all your different, your power, your water, everything's there. You're talking to Building Code, which is underneath planning, to make sure what you're doing is to code. Everybody needs to be safe. Planning again, zoning. You got to make sure that the use that you're talking about fits in with the area. They're not going to want to put a shipyard or an industrial use in the smack dab in the middle of a residential zoned area. Same thing, they don't want to put residential in the middle of an industrial district. Now, having said that, I'm going to tangent for a second. You are starting to see residential pop up in old industrial districts, big warehouses, apartment buildings such as that. But generally speaking, they're making sure that uses go with long-range planning and different. If you happen to have a long-range plan for your city or locale, most of them do. But generally, your planning, your utilities, your building codes, a lot of times, make it easy, your Public Works, your planning, your economic development, your Commissioner of Revenue, sometimes finance, depending. But that's where, again, your economic development people have people in that office that cross all different aspects of city government. So an example of me, I interface with every single department in the city. So again, if you're talking to your economic development office, generally they're going to be the ones helping you, hold your hand, going through all of that. But those are going to be the biggest ones that you use. And again, there's a lot of sub-departments like surveys and streets and bridges and other things that fall under these big, massive public works and planning departments. Yes, sir.
How do you handle referrals out to like an organization like Hatch or Chamber of Commerce when it's clear to you, in your opinions, that this prospective business owner really doesn't know what they're doing?
Right.
So how do you decide, just in conversation or how do you do that?
Well, generally, also, I guess I should start being public employees. You have, we are not really supposed to recommend one individual because that could be potentially shown as favoritism and the whole transparency thing. Everybody needs a fair chance. So what I do is I get a good idea of what the need is, and then I go through and try to figure out which at least 2 or 3 groups that they could talk to. I never say you need to go here. This is number one. But generally, and I'm gonna get specific on region and locale for a second in Norfolk here. So generally the ones that I throw out if you need help with business planning are going to be your SCORE, your Small Business Development Center. Those are going to be at least the two. Now there's, Op Inc. and some other ones out there that obviously do the same thing, so we kind of try to package that as well. But really the best thing that a public employee can do to kind of keep themselves safe is not recommend one particular individual, because then again that can kind of be perceived as favoritism. So I try to do my best and see what the need is, and whether that goes to kind of an incubator or more of kind of a small business development center type. Like if they need access to help small business loans, I'm not necessarily going to send them to SCORE or some of the others. I'm going to send them to the Small Business Development Center because they've got contacts with the Small Business Administration who issues those loans. So it really just depends on the case. But that's kind of how I roll, at least. Any other questions? Well, great. Again, I appreciate y'all taking the time today to listen to me. Again, I'm Chris Tillett from the City of Norfolk.